There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like suffocation. The kind that sits inside your chest like a weight you can't name. You smile at people. You show up. You function. But there's a version of you that's been screaming from behind your eyes for years. That scream is where Jung began. Carl Jung didn't discover the soul in books or theories. He found it in collapse. In 1913, after parting ways with Freud and spiraling into what many would call madness, Jung descended into what he named the night sea journey, a psychological disintegration that shattered his identity. He wasn't trying to be strong. He wasn't trying to be healed. He was listening. And what he heard changed everything. The world tells you to escape pain. Jung did the opposite. He entered it. He sat with it. He let it speak its ancient language. Because pain in Jung's world wasn't a malfunction. It was myth. It was message. It was mirror. And until you stop running from it, it keeps finding new ways to reach you, through panic, through depression, through relationships that recycle the same wound in different bodies. Here's the paradox. Strength isn't born from overcoming pain. Strength is born from inhabiting it long enough for it to teach you who you were before the mask, before the adaptation, before the betrayal. Jung said, "Only the wounded physician heals," because only those who have bled internally know how to recognize that same hemorrhage in others, not to fix it, but to witness it, to name it, to decode it. And this isn't just Jung. Nietzsche whispered it too. In words sharp enough to wound, one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. Shaheen is not your prison. It's the womb. But only if you stop treating it like a curse. Only if you stop numbing it to fit into a life that never fit you. So let me ask you something. What if your silent agony isn't about what they did to you? What if it's about the parts of you that you had to bury, to be palatable, to be useful, to be okay? What if the real wound is the one you inflicted on yourself the day you chose survival over truth? This video isn't about how to survive pain. It's about how to become dangerous through it, how to confront what you've silenced so completely. It now speaks through your body, your fears, your patterns. This is about making pain your ally, not your enemy. This is about stopping the performance and starting the descent. Let's begin. There's a kind of suicide no one ever names, the kind where you keep waking up, going to work, smiling on cue, while your real self quietly fades in the background. That's what emotional adaptation does. It doesn't kill you in one clean moment. It erodes you, gently and visibly and with applause. Every time you said it's okay when it wasn't, you weren't being strong. You were rehearsing your own erasure. Carl Jung saw it not as a personal flaw, but as a psychic cost. He called it the fragmentation of the self, a process where, to survive an environment that doesn't welcome truth, you amputate your authenticity to be loved, or at least to be tolerated. But what no one tells you is that this kind of survival has a price. The soul starts a quiet rebellion. Not with words, but with symptoms, fatigue, numbness, anxiety that arrives like a storm at 3 a.m., rage that doesn't fit the moment. These aren't malfunctions. They are the pieces of you banging on the inside of your skin, begging to be let back in. Jung understood that these symptoms are mythological, ancient cries from the part of us we've sent into exile. And here's the twist. The more you adapt, the more you disappear. Not from the world's eyes, but from your own reflection. Your pain isn't weakness. It's memory. It remembers every moment you smiled when you wanted to scream, every time you were grateful when you were actually abandoned, and it won't let you lie to yourself forever. That's why pretending you're fine doesn't make you strong. That makes you hollow. And when the mask starts to crack and when your body can't carry the weight of being liked anymore, that's not collapse, that's resurrection. So the question isn't, how do I fix this? The question is far more sacred. What did I bury in order to be loved? And the even harder one, can I forgive myself for making silence my survival strategy? Pain doesn't want to be healed. Not at first. It wants to be heard, like a language you forgot how to speak, but that still echoes in your dreams. Carl Jung didn't escape his pain. He descended into it. When the world labeled him as unraveling, he began to write, to draw, to dream, not to escape the collapse, but to meet it face to face. To him, pain wasn't a detour. It was a sacred symbol, a map back to the parts of the psyche long exiled and encrypted. He treated his symptoms, the visions, the anxiety, the emptiness, not as pathologies to be silenced, but as oracles. He understood what most still resist, that the soul does not speak in logic, it speaks in symbols, and pain is one of its sharpest dialects. Your panic isn't a glitch. It's the sound of a door slamming open inside you, a threshold you were taught to ignore. Your exhaustion isn't just burnout. It's your unconscious pulling all its energy into a single message. Come back. You've gone too far from yourself. Jung entered what he called the archetypal underworld, a realm where dreams aren't random and suffering is full of hidden meaning. He saw myths in his insomnia. He saw gods in his fears. He met his shadow and realized it wasn't there to destroy him, but to initiate him. That's what modern healing often misses. It tries to fix, to soothe, to normalize. But Jung knew. The soul doesn't want comfort. It wants confrontation. It wants to be named, to be mirrored, to be honored. And that can only happen when we stop trying to silence the symptoms and start asking, what are you trying to tell me? Imagine if your depression wasn't a curse, but a descent into an inner winter meant to reset your entire foundation. Imagine if your recurring heartbreaks weren't bad luck, but symbolic echoes trying to show you a deeper rupture, the place where you abandoned yourself long before anyone else did. To Jung, this was not poetic nonsense. It was the heart of individuation. The process by which a person becomes whole, not by pretending the darkness isn't there, but by integrating it, because wholeness doesn't mean light, it means union, and pain, when seen clearly, becomes a guide, a torch in the underworld. It becomes the thing that doesn't just hurt you, but wakes you. So the next time the ache returns, the numbness, the fire, the tears with no clear cause, ask not, how do I stop this? Ask, what myth am I living, and better yet, what part of me is trying to come back from the dead? The ones who suffer in silence are often the ones collapsing the fastest. Not because they're weak, but because the weight of pretending is heavier than the wound itself. You've been applauded for holding it together, for being the calm one, the reliable one, the one who never complains. But that praise? It's a cage. Because while the world claps for your composure, no one asks what it's costing you. Carl Jung saw through this illusion. He understood that the persona, the mask we wear to appear strong, becomes a prison when it no longer serves truth. The strong one is often just a child in armor, terrified of what would happen if anyone saw the bleeding underneath. Culture sells us the myth that strength means endurance, that silence is maturity, that not needing anyone is power. But Jung revealed a deeper truth. When pain is suppressed, it doesn't vanish. It shapeshifts. It becomes compulsion, projection, shadow. What you won't face in yourself, you'll chase in others. Or worse, recreate. You'll attract the same dynamics. The same betrayals, the same patterns. Not because you're cursed, but because the wound is trying to be seen, and every time you suppress it, it sharpens its tools. It finds new ways to echo. Being strong isn't about pretending nothing touches you. It's about facing what already did and daring to feel it fully. Jung didn't admire the stoic mask. He admired the one who could weep without shame, rage without destruction, break and still speak truth through the shards. Because real power begins where performance ends. And when you finally stop pretending, something strange happens. The world doesn't fall apart. You do. And in that collapse, you find the pieces you forgot existed. So ask yourself, who benefits from your silence? And more importantly, what might awaken if you finally stopped wearing the myth of the strong one? You don't become whole by fixing yourself. You become whole by facing what you were taught to fear inside you. That's the secret Jung uncovered in his own descent. The parts you reject, the rage, the envy, the shame, don't disappear. They go underground. They become the shadow. And the longer you avoid it, the more power it gains. Healing isn't about becoming more positive. It's about becoming more honest. And that honesty starts with letting the forbidden feelings speak, not to justify them, but to hear them, to understand why they're there, to honor the unmet needs behind them. This is shadow alchemy, the transformation that happens when you stop pretending and start integrating, when you realize you don't need to be better, you need to be braver. Jung taught that the ego wants control, but the soul wants truth. And truth demands descent into discomfort, into contradiction, into complexity. Not to drown in it, but to reclaim what was never meant to be lost. The furnace of collapse isn't where you die. It's where the false self burns away. And what emerges isn't perfect, but it's real. You'll know you're changing not when you feel calm all the time, but when you can sit with the storm and no longer need to run. So the next time you feel yourself unraveling, remember, this is not failure. This is fusion. This is your shadow, saying, I'm ready to come home. The most invisible chains are the ones you mistake for love. You weren't just hurt. You were trained to minimize your pain, trained to apologize for needing, trained to believe that your worth depended on how easy you were to love. And so, little by little, you turned your back on yourself, not because you wanted to, but because survival required it. This is the unseen chain Jung warned about, the unconscious patterns rooted in early emotional exile. When a child is met with rejection instead of comfort, silence instead of understanding, they learn something brutal. I must abandon myself to be safe. And that belief doesn't vanish with age. It grows roots. It becomes the adult who stays too long in relationships where they're unseen, who confuses guilt with intimacy, who feels most secure when sacrificing themselves. Jung saw these patterns not as personal flaws, but as archetypal imprints, inherited scripts that keep playing until someone has the courage to rewrite them. And courage, in this case, means confrontation. Not with others, but with the moment you stopped believing your emotions had value. You think your pain is about now. But it's older than your memory. It's wired into your nervous system. It whispers through your reactions, and unless you name it, it becomes your identity. You start to believe that love always feels like walking on eggshells, that being chosen means being quiet, that having needs is dangerous, but love that requires your silence isn't love, it's performance. And healing doesn't begin with more effort. It begins with this realization. You are allowed to exist fully, even if no one ever taught you how, so look closely. The chain isn't around your wrists, it's in your beliefs. And every time you betray your truth to feel accepted, it tightens. The question is, what would it cost to break it? And deeper still, what would it feel like to never apologize for being whole? There's a loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from always feeling like you were never meant to belong in the first place. You've walked into rooms and felt like a stranger in your own skin. You've smiled while something inside you whispered, you don't fit here. And for years you thought that meant something was wrong with you, but Jung knew otherwise. He called it the archetype of the exile, the one who doesn't conform, not out of rebellion, but because their truth is too raw for a world addicted to masks. You were never meant to fit. That ache of alienation is not a flaw, it's an initiation. Society rewards conformity, not consciousness. It wants you polished, agreeable, predictable. But the more you try to mold yourself into what's acceptable, the more distant you become from your essence. And that essence, wild, complex, unfiltered, doesn't die. It just waits, in silence, in dreams, in the strange longing that won't go away. Jung's process of individuation begins here, the moment you realize that your exile is sacred, that you're not broken for feeling different. You're being called to live differently, to stop adapting, to start remembering, because truth rarely fits, and those who carry it often walk alone, not forever, but long enough to understand their own voice without the noise of the crowd. You are not meant to belong everywhere. You are meant to belong deeply to yourself. And the moment you stop chasing acceptance, the moment you stop muting your depth to be more digestible, you begin the return to the part of you that was never lost, just exiled, waiting for you to choose it again. So if you've always felt out of place, maybe it's not because you're lost. Maybe it's because you're carrying a truth the world isn't ready to hear. Yet, Carl Jung never taught us to chase happiness. He taught us to confront the soul, to walk straight into the chaos we've been trained to avoid. Because in that descent, in the darkness, in the contradiction, in the ache, something ancient wakes up. He didn't see pain as a problem to fix. He saw it as a compass. Every symptom, every breakdown, every rupture, a coded message from the self trying to come back from exile, not to be erased, but to be integrated. Kierkegaard named this the sickness unto death, a despair, born not from suffering, but from refusing to become who you really are. That's the wound most people live with, not the pain of what happened, but the slow, suffocating ache of pretending it didn't. You weren't meant to be perfect. You were meant to be whole, which means you will carry contradictions. You will be light and shadow, clarity and chaos, tenderness and rage. And when you finally stop apologizing for that, when you stop amputating parts of yourself just to be accepted, you begin to feel real. This isn't the kind of healing that makes you more lovable. It's the kind that makes you more true. And in a world addicted to performance, that kind of truth is dangerous. So don't ask if you're healing fast enough. Ask if you're finally listening to what your pain has been whispering all along. If this reached something in you, let it echo back. Subscribe, leave a comment. Not for me, for you. For the part of you that's tired of pretending it's not there. Carl Jung walked into the darkness and found his way not by escaping it, but by translating it. What's waiting inside your silence to be spoken? Not for others, but for you.